What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're back with some Destiny 2 news. Of course it is Thursday, so we've got this week at Bungie, and in this one they jump in and give us a bunch of weapon changes we can expect to see with the launch of Season 18. And so they talk about global changes to weapons, but also specific archetype updates. They even have a few updates to origin traits in different playlists, and then a bunch of exotic buffs and nerfs. That includes both weapons and armor, plus there are some weapons that they are reworking altogether. And then we have a couple of other things to mention related to the end of the season. And so, as always guys, I hope you find the video useful, but without further delay, let's jump into it. Weapon changes are the main focus of the TWAB right here, and Mercules from Bungie says, we've moved a good bit of the balance changes from Season 18 forward to the mid-season patch that we saw in Season 17. So this is a slightly lighter weapon sandbox update, although there are still some significant changes, and so, for global changes, they say they fixed a problem that was introduced with the 30th anniversary update that caused too much heavy ammo to drop when running double special weapons. And on top of this, several weapon stats were previously hidden, which made fully evaluating weapons difficult, and so airborne effectiveness, recoil direction, zoom and aim assist are now going to be visible in the weapon inspection screen. That's going to be pretty cool. And straight away we get onto weapon archetypes. So for scout rifles, they're increasing the damage of all scout rifles versus minor enemies, which includes red bars, in PvE by 10%, and this changes in addition to the baseline damage buff given in the Solstice balance patch. So getting a bit more of a PvE buff right there, but for high impact auto rifles, they say they're increasing the base stability stat of all non-sunset high impact autos by 6 to 12, depending on the weapon. And then for lightweight bows, they point out that the subfamily has languished compared to the higher damage counterparts. So they're reducing the base draw time by 5%, and they're increasing the perfect draw window, which is how long you can hold a drawn bow before you begin to lose accuracy and damage. And it's going from 0.30 seconds to 0.50 on the low end, and 0.55 seconds to 0.80 on the high end. We've got adjustments to hand cannons, and they're fixing Dire Promise's zoom stat, which was changed to 13 inadvertently. And for glaives, they point out that interactions with some exotic armor pieces can be confusing, and glaive melee attacks will now activate the exotic armor perks on ACDO feedback fence, Karnstein armlets, and necrotic grit. That could be pretty fun to play around with. But also we get breach grenade launcher changes, and concussion grenades can no longer roll in the magazine slot, and they point out that this is because blinding grenades are a better option in the same slot that serves the same purpose. Then for heavy grenade launchers, they've increased damage versus majors and above by 10%, although that will exclude Parasite. Next though, they're updating some weapon pool stuff and origin traits, and they've updated perk pools for Dares of Eternity weapons, and added an origin trait. They've also fixed a problem where playlist weapons weren't randomizing individual perk columns. It'll be interesting to see what the Dares origin trait's going to be there. But they're also going to be reworking Gambit and Iron Banner origin traits, and they say they're too specific to be generally useful. So for Invader Tracker, the Gambit origin trait, they've renamed it to Gun and Run, and the redesigned functionality is to give a sprint speed increase on multi-kills. Then we have Skulking Wolf from the Iron Banner, and they've redesigned it to activate on kills while at low health, and so it will always work in PvP. Additionally though, they'll be making other adjustments to perks, and for Ambitious Assassin, they're increasing the magazine overflow from 10% to 20% per kill on primary weapons, with special and heavy weapons still being 10%. However, they've also increased the overflow cap from 50 to 150%. They say for Wellspring that it had an internal cooldown to prevent it from activating too frequently, and they no longer feel this is needed, so the cooldown has been removed, allowing for rocket launchers and grenade launchers to return more ability energy when defeating groups with a single shot. Additionally, they disabled the audio and visual feedback for perpetual motion activating, as this was jarring when triggering frequently, and they say that Lead from Gold wasn't respecting the functionality of splitting the special ammo picked up when two special weapons were equipped, and it now gives the correct amount of ammo to each weapon when we've got two special weapons equipped. Additionally though, concussion grenades will no longer be able to roll on breach grenade launchers. And they point out that Vice Stinger was intended to grant ammo on weapons that support it, and charge and draw time on bows only, but it was inadvertently applying to linear fusion rifles as well, and it will now correctly only refill the magazine from reserves when it triggers on those weapons. Then here they say that Zen Moment and Particle Repeater have had their descriptions updated to say what they actually do. And then we got onto some buffs here, and they've added anti-champion functionality to several weapons, with the goal of giving more options for each champion type. So, Le Monarch will get intrinsic overload to poison arrows, overload will also apply intrinsically to Thunderlord, and then they've added intrinsic unstoppable to malfeasance explosions, and plus 25 to the base airborne effectiveness stat of that weapon. Then for Wishender, they've added intrinsic anti-barrier, and increased the number of hits versus most targets from 2 to 3. increased the damage versus champions, mages, and mini-bosses by 10%, and draw time has been decreased from 828 milliseconds to 820. They say here that Tiku's Divination will get a free, small buff from global lightweight bow changes, and draw time has been decreased from 612 to 580 points. Also, Legend of Acreus has fallen behind other heavy weapons, and they say it warrants a buff, so the Catalyst now grants the Trench Barrel perk in addition to other effects. And different versions of the exotic paired legendary weapons didn't have matching stats, so they say they've brought them up to parity. Plus for Callus Minotaur, they've increased the airborne effectiveness from 23 to 28 to match the Mida Minotaur. They've also increased zoom on Mida Minotaur from 13 to 14, increased airborne effectiveness for Drang Baroque from 21 to 23, and Sweet Business gets an increase to airborne effectiveness from 27 to 32. And Fighting Lion's Season 17 5% damage buff was rolled back as part of a fix for a larger bug, so this is being reintroduced and increased. And it now receives the intended buff, increased from 5% to 8%, plus they increased the grace time for the instant reload effect of Thin the Herd from 5 to 6 seconds. And here Bungie outlined some reworks for weapons, so these are complete reworks on exotics, and for Lord of Wolves, they say for a long time it's been a thorn in the side of PvP players, and they're decreasing starting ammo in PvP from 15 to 10, with PvE being unchanged. They're also reducing the burst size, which is shots fired per trigger pull, from 10 to 5 shots when Release the Wolves is active. On top of this though, they're reducing the burst delay, and this will be by 60% when Release the Wolves is active. And they've decreased base damage for the weapon by 20% when that bonus is up, but they've increased damage in PvE by 20% to compensate. It's a pretty big adjustment right there. There's also an adjustment for Dead Man's Tail, and they say the Cranial Spike perk was causing issues with unintended damage scalers against players, so they've changed the bonus's effects, and Cranial Spike no longer buffs damage versus players, instead it grants increased reload, aim assist, and range per stack. They point out that it will still increase damage in PvE, but upon reaching max stacks of Cranial Spike, the Catalyst will now increase hipfire RPM by 50, so it will fire at 180 RPM, but will deal reduced damage per bullet, which is a 20% decrease. So another fairly significant change there, and finally for Collective Obligation, they say they want to make it easier to get the exotic perk to proc in PvE, and they've increased Void Leech timers by 15 seconds in PvE activities, with PvP remaining at 10 seconds. Then they've removed the cooldown, and added a 20% damage bonus against PvE combatants only while Void Leech is active. Plus it will take less hits to fully charge Void Leech, and kills against debuffed targets instantly charge it, as well as it instantly being charged when our character is affected by Void debuffs, and they point out that it will not work if hitting yourself with your own suppressor grenade. Plus they fixed a bug where Umbral Sustenance was activating with non-Void overshields. So we get a mixed bag of nerfs and buffs on the exotic weapons right there, and then Bungie say, in update 6201, they will be reducing the effectiveness of damage resistance used by Omnioculus and Whisper of Chains in PvP, but PvE damage resistance will be unchanged. And so Tier 1 goes from 10% to 2.5%, Tier 2 from 15 to 5%, Tier 3 from 20% to 7.5%, and Tier 4 from 25% to 10%. So that's going to affect that exotic armor quite a lot inside of PvP. And they finish here by saying they're looking at various other things for a mid-Season 18 patch, or potentially to drop in Season 19, but they want to reduce shotgun spread randomness, reduce bow swapping effectiveness, as well as looking at ease of use for trace rifles and how that can be increased. Introducing the full auto setting, so at least we have some news about that. Plus, they're reducing the ability of snipers to shoot through flinch in PvP. Plus, they want to examine some small targeted balance changes to certain PvP outliers, pulse rifles with out-of-band effectiveness, and the ease of use of both high-impact scout rifles and precision fusion rifles. And finally, they'll also look to allow glaive interactions with some exotic armors that buff melees, fixing glaive hit detection, reworking some enhanced perks, and folding spec mods into the base perks. So we can expect even more changes to come. Plus they point out finally that players should claim in-game rewards by the end of the season, including any rewards from ritual vendors. And at the end of the TWAB they tease that we'll get some Arc 3.0 info coming soonish to a Bungie page, so if not at the end of this week, perhaps sometime next week, we're going to get a much more in-depth look at Arc 3.0. So as always, give us your thoughts on what Bungie have touched on in the TWAB and the adjustments that they're planning to make for the new season. The very final minor bit of news for the video today, and from Destiny Bulletin on Twitter, who I'll link down below. They highlight an article from Torrent Freak and say in response to Bungie's lawsuit filed last year, aim junkies and Phoenix Digital, who sell Destiny 2 cheats, have argued that cheating is not illegal and that game companies want to make it illegal because they cannot govern their own players. So they're certainly fighting back against Bungie's lawsuit, and have even gone as far to request Destiny 2's monthly player count and sales from Steam in order to try and disprove Bungie's argument that cheating hurts the company and has taken away values and sales from them, which is certainly an interesting argument. Plus, they additionally say that Bungie is impotent against cheaters, and even with the vast resources and technologies at their disposal, they essentially argue that their protection against cheats is fundamentally flawed or essentially not robust enough to actually detect or stop them. And given how cheating has kind of changed over time and as Destiny has moved from different platforms, I think there certainly sounds like an element of that being true. However, it's interesting again because it highlights that aim junkies are definitely fighting back. Feels like we're doing the weekly Destiny legal news section right here. Bungie have been tackling and tracking down a lot of various problem sources. So as always, feel free to give us your thoughts on that one, and I'll link the articles in the description box below. For today though guys, that is everything that we have to break down in the video. So as always, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and if you have, a rating down below really does help us out on the channel. Feel free once again to get subscribed if you've enjoyed the content. Give us any of your thoughts also on the adjustments that Bungie have outlined in the TWAB today. And feel free to check out our sponsor at Gamer Supps, who've got some awesome tasty and sugar-free drinks designed to improve focus while gaming. Be sure to check them out and use discount code HOUNDISH to save 10%. And otherwise, for now guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.